Princess of Seven Trials. The Kingdom Beyond the Silver Mountains. Long ago, beyond the Silver Mountains and beside a quiet blue sea, there stood a peaceful kingdom named Eldoria. The people of Eldoria lived simple lives. They grew flowers, tended sheep, and spent their evenings listening to the soft songs of the ocean breeze. At the center of the kingdom stood a magnificent white castle surrounded by gardens filled with roses and glowing lanterns. In that castle lived King Alden and his beloved daughter, Princess Elena. Princess Elena was known throughout the kingdom not only for her beauty but also for her kindness. She often walked among the villagers, helping children learn to read and listening patiently to the stories of the elderly. Every evening, before sunset, she would sit beneath an ancient willow tree near the castle lake. The gentle ripples of the water reflected the golden sky as she watched birds glide peacefully across the horizon. Yet despite the beauty surrounding her, Elena often felt lonely. Many princes from distant lands came seeking her hand in marriage. They arrived wearing golden armor, riding magnificent horses, and carrying precious gifts. But none of them truly knew her. Some admired her beauty. Some desired her kingdom. Others wished only for power. The king noticed his daughter's sadness. One evening, while the stars slowly appeared above the castle towers, King Alden sat beside Elena beneath the willow tree. "My daughter," he said softly, "why does your heart seem troubled?" Elena smiled gently. "Father, everyone sees a princess. No one sees Elena." The king remained silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "I understand." Far beyond Eldoria, in a small mountain village hidden among pine forests, lived a young man named Rowan. Rowan was not a prince. He was not wealthy. He owned no castle and wore no crown. He worked as a carpenter alongside his grandfather, crafting wooden toys, chairs, and musical instruments. People loved Rowan because of his honest heart. Every evening after work, he would sit beside a small river and listen to the sounds of nature. The flowing water. The singing birds. The whispering wind. His greatest dream was simple. To one day find someone who loved him for who he truly was. One autumn morning, news spread across every kingdom. Messengers rode through cities and villages carrying royal announcements. The proclamation read, "Princess Elena shall marry only the one who completes the 7 trials of the heart." The king had made a decision. No longer would wealth or noble birth determine Elena's future. Instead, anyone could attempt the 7 trials. Prince or farmer. Knight or shepherd. Rich or poor. Only courage, wisdom, kindness, and true love would matter. Across the world, excitement began to grow. Princes sharpened their swords. Warriors prepared for adventure. Scholars studied ancient maps. And in a small mountain village, Rowan quietly read the royal proclamation pinned to the town square. As he stood there beneath the golden leaves of autumn, something stirred deep within his heart. Not ambition. Not greed. Not a desire for power. But a strange feeling he could not explain. A feeling that perhaps destiny had just whispered his name. The wind gently moved through the trees. The river continued its peaceful song. And far away in Eldoria, Princess Elena gazed at the evening stars, unaware that a humble carpenter had just taken the first step toward a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Rowan begins the journey to Eldoria. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the pine-covered mountains. A soft mist floated above the river beside Rowan's village, and the world seemed unusually quiet. Rowan had barely slept. The royal proclamation remained in his thoughts throughout the night. The 7 trials of the heart. Many would see it as an opportunity to gain a kingdom. But Rowan felt something different. He could not explain why. It was as if an invisible thread was gently pulling him toward Eldoria. After breakfast, Rowan walked to the small workshop where his grandfather was carving a wooden bird. The old man glanced up and smiled. "You look like a man standing at the beginning of a long road." Rowan laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" His grandfather nodded. The eyes always reveal what the mouth tries to hide. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the gentle scraping of wood echoed through the workshop. Finally Rowan took a deep breath. "Grandfather, I think I must go." The old man placed his carving knife down. "To Eldoria?" "Yes." The grandfather smiled as though he had known all along. "Then you should go." Rowan looked surprised. "You aren't going to stop me?" "Why would I?" the old man replied. "Every person receives a few important invitations from destiny. Refusing them often leads to regret." The word settled warmly inside Rowan's heart. That evening they packed a small bag. A blanket. Some bread. A water skin. A wooden flute Rowan had carved himself. And a silver compass that had belonged to his grandfather when he was young. Before dawn the following morning, Rowan stood at the edge of the village. The sky was painted with soft shades of blue and pink. Birds were beginning to wake. The world felt peaceful. His grandfather embraced him tightly. "Remember something," he said. "The 7 trials may test strength and courage. But the greatest test is always kindness." Rowan nodded. "I'll remember." Then he began walking. The village slowly disappeared behind him. For 3 days he traveled through forests filled with towering trees. Sunlight filtered through the leaves above like golden ribbons. At night he slept beneath the stars. The journey was long, but strangely beautiful. On the 4th day, Rowan encountered his first challenge. While crossing a forest path, he heard a faint cry. He followed the sound and discovered a small fox trapped beneath a fallen branch. The frightened animal struggled helplessly. Rowan could have continued his journey. After all, many competitors were already racing toward Eldoria. Every moment mattered. Yet he could not ignore the creature's fear. Carefully, he lifted the heavy branch. The fox slowly crawled free. For a moment it stared at him with bright golden eyes. Then it gently touched his hand with its nose before disappearing into the woods. Rowan smiled. His journey continued. 2 days later he reached a small town. There he discovered hundreds of travelers heading toward Eldoria. Powerful knights rode magnificent horses. Princes traveled with servants and soldiers. Some wore armor decorated with gold and jewels. When they saw Rowan's simple clothes, many laughed. "A carpenter," one nobleman scoffed. "You expect to win the princess?" Others joined the laughter. But Rowan simply smiled and continued walking. Their words did not anger him. He had not come to prove himself better than anyone. He had only come to follow the path destiny had placed before him. Several days later, the Silver Mountains finally appeared on the horizon. Beyond them lay Eldoria. Beyond them waited Princess Elena. And beyond them waited the mysterious 7 trials. As sunset painted the sky gold and crimson, Rowan stood on a hilltop overlooking the distant kingdom. Its white castle shimmered like a dream in the fading light. A gentle breeze moved across the grass. For reasons he could not understand, Rowan felt as though he was exactly where he was meant to be. Far away, in the castle gardens, Princess Elena stood beneath the ancient willow tree. She looked toward the western horizon. Toward the mountains. Toward the countless travelers approaching her kingdom. And for the briefest moment, she felt a strange feeling in her heart. As if someone important was drawing closer with every step. The first trial would begin in only 3 days. And neither Rowan nor Elena knew that their lives were about to change forever. The Forest of Truth. 3 days later, the gates of Eldoria opened at sunrise. A quiet mist still lingered over the fields, and the white walls of the kingdom looked almost dreamlike under the pale morning light. Hundreds of travelers gathered outside the royal entrance. Knights in shining armor, nobles in embroidered cloaks, scholars carrying ancient scrolls, and wanderers from distant lands all stood waiting. Rowan stood among them. His clothes were still simple, slightly worn from the journey. His wooden staff rested lightly in his hand, and the small silver compass hung from his belt. Unlike many others, he did not speak loudly or boast about victory. He simply observed the surroundings in calm silence. A royal horn sounded. The massive gates slowly opened. A deep voice echoed from within the castle walls. The first trial begins now. All who seek the princess must enter the forest of truth. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. The forest of truth, someone asked. A place where illusions are born, another replied nervously. The name alone carried weight. Old stories said the forest did not test strength, but honesty. It revealed what a person hid within their heart. Still, no one stepped back. Because every man there believed he had nothing to fear. The travelers began entering the forest one by one. Rowan followed quietly. As soon as he stepped under the trees, the world changed. The sunlight above dimmed, replaced by a soft silver glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air felt heavier, yet strangely peaceful. The deeper he walked, the quieter everything became. No birds. No wind. Only footsteps, and thoughts. After some time, Rowan noticed something strange. The path ahead seemed to split into many directions, even though the forest should have had only one road. Trees shifted slightly whenever he looked away. Shadows seemed to move with intention. Then he heard a voice. Soft. Familiar. Rowan. He stopped. Who's there? He asked gently. No answer came. Instead, a figure slowly appeared between the trees. It was his grandfather. Rowan's eyes widened slightly. The old man looked exactly as he remembered, calm eyes, gentle smile, the same worn hands that once carved wood beside the river. Grandfather? Rowan whispered. The figure nodded. You shouldn't be here, the grandfather said softly. Return home. The journey is not yours. Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. For a moment, he almost believed it. Almost. But then he noticed something small. The way the figure never blinked. The way the voice echoed slightly, like it was coming from inside the forest rather than a living throat. Rowan closed his eyes. I miss him, he said quietly. But he would never tell me to abandon my path. The figure paused. For the first time, its smile trembled. The forest around them darkened slightly. Then the illusion dissolved like smoke in the wind. The trees returned to stillness. Rowan opened his eyes again. There was nothing there. Only silence. He exhaled slowly and continued walking. Not far ahead, others were not doing so well. Some travelers were shouting at invisible enemies. Others were frozen in fear, trapped inside illusions of failure, loss, or regret. A knight knelt on the ground, seeing himself stripped of honor. A scholar cried as if his life's knowledge had been erased. The forest did not harm bodies. It revealed fears. Rowan kept walking. At one point, he came across a narrow clearing where a young traveler sat trembling. The boy looked no older than 16. I can't move, the boy whispered. The forest keeps showing me things I don't want to see. Rowan knelt beside him. What do you see? He asked. The boy hesitated. My father, saying I'm worthless. Rowan remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke gently. Sometimes the forest does not show truth. It shows wounds that were never healed. He offered the boy his hand. "Come. Walk with me." The boy hesitated, then slowly took it. Together, they continued through the shifting shadows. As they walked, Rowan realized something important. The forest of truth was not about proving perfection. It was about accepting imperfection without being destroyed by it. By late afternoon, the trees began to thin. A soft golden light appeared ahead. The exit. One by one, survivors stepped out of the forest, exhausted but alive. Rowan and the boy emerged together. Outside, royal guards observed silently as the names of those who passed were recorded. Among hundreds who entered, only a few dozen remained. The crowd murmured again, this time with respect. Inside the castle, far above them, Princess Elena stood behind a tall window. She watched the forest exit quietly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were distant. Something about the names being read stayed in her heart. She did not know why. But she felt that the first trial had already changed everything. And somewhere beyond the forest gates, Rowan was breathing the open air again, unaware that the second trial would demand something far more difficult than truth. It would demand sacrifice. The River of Silence. The morning after the first trial, the remaining contestants were given no time to rest. A cold wind moved through Eldoria's outer courtyard as the royal guards gathered everyone once again. The number of survivors had dropped sharply. Those who remained now looked different, less confident, more quiet, as if the forest of truth had taken something unseen from them. Rowan stood near the edge of the group. The boy he had helped in the forest, named Leor, stood beside him. He still looked shaken, but there was a small strength in his eyes now. A royal messenger stepped forward. "The second trial begins immediately," he announced. "All who remain must cross the River of Silence." A low murmur spread through the crowd. Even those who had survived the forest exchanged uneasy glances. "The River of Silence," an older knight muttered, "doesn't kill you. It takes something worse." Rowan listened carefully. He had heard whispers about this place during his journey, but no one spoke of it clearly. Some said it stole memories. Others said it erased voices. A few believed it forced a person to face their deepest regret without the ability to speak or defend themselves. The group was led to the eastern edge of the kingdom. There, beyond stone cliffs and mist-covered rocks, lay the river. It was wider than any normal river, stretching far into the horizon like a silver wound across the land. Its surface did not ripple like ordinary water. Instead, it moved silently, too smoothly, almost as if time itself had slowed above it. There were no birds. No insects. No sound at all. Even the wind seemed afraid to touch it. A stone platform stood at the riverbank, and a single narrow path of floating black stones led across to the other side. A voice echoed from unseen speakers placed within the cliffs. "To cross the River of Silence, you must release one thing you refuse to let go." The contestants froze. "Anything," the voice continued. "A memory. A desire. A fear. A name. But something must be left behind." Rowan felt a strange heaviness in his chest. Not fear. Something deeper. The first contestant stepped forward, a proud knight from the northern lands. Without hesitation, he stepped onto the floating stones. At first, he moved steadily. But halfway across, his steps slowed. His eyes widened slightly as if something invisible had touched his mind. He dropped to his knees. No sound came from him, but his face changed, pain, regret, and confusion all mixing together. Then, slowly, he stood again, and continued walking. When he reached the other side, he looked different. Not physically. But something in his expression was gone. As if a part of him had quietly disappeared. One by one, others followed. Some returned safely. Some did not. And some forgot why they were even there. When Leor's turn came, he hesitated. "I'm scared," he whispered. Rowan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then don't fight it alone," Rowan said gently. "Just keep walking." Leor nodded and stepped onto the stones. Rowan watched carefully as the boy crossed. At one point, Leor stumbled, his hands trembling as if he was fighting an invisible storm inside his mind. But he remembered something. He looked back at Rowan once. And that was enough. He reached the other side. When Rowan's name was called, the river felt closer than ever. He stepped forward without hesitation. The moment his foot touched the first stone, everything changed. The world became silent, deeper than before. Even his thoughts felt distant, as if they were floating away. Then came the memories. His village. His grandfather's workshop. The river beside his home. And then, something else. A feeling he could not fully name. A warmth. A face he had never truly seen before, yet somehow felt familiar. The image of Princess Elena. For a moment, the memory tried to hold him back. The river seemed to ask silently, "What are you willing to forget?" Rowan closed his eyes. "I won't forget who I am," he whispered inside his mind. Step by step, he moved forward. The silence pressed harder, like invisible waves against his thoughts. He felt pieces of himself slipping away, small memories, distant feelings, forgotten moments. But he kept walking. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Eventually, the soundless world began to fade. A faint breeze returned. Then light. Then sound. Rowan stepped onto the far shore. He knelt for a moment, breathing deeply. Something inside him felt lighter, but also quieter. As if the river had taken a small, unseen piece of his past. Across the shore, Leor waited for him. "You made it," the boy said softly. Rowan nodded. "I think we all lost something." Above them, the castle towers of Eldoria loomed closer now. Only a few trials remained. And somewhere within those walls, Princess Elena watched the horizon more often than she admitted. Feeling as if something important was slowly approaching, step by step, without even knowing its name. The third trial would not test truth or sacrifice. It would test trust. And trust, as the kingdom would soon learn, is often the most fragile thing of all. Trial of broken trust. The morning sky over Eldoria was pale and quiet, as if even the sun was unsure about what was coming next. The remaining contestants were gathered inside a vast stone hall beneath the castle. Tall pillars stretched upward into shadow, and thin beams of light fell through narrow windows like silent blades. The second trial had taken more than just participants. It had taken confidence. Now only a small group remained. Rowan stood with Leor nearby, both of them silent. The river of silence still lingered in their minds, not as pain, but as emptiness in certain corners of thought they could not fully explain. A royal official stepped forward. "The third trial begins now," he said. "This is the trial of broken trust." A murmur spread through the hall. "Each of you will be paired with another contestant," the official continued. "You will enter the labyrinth of mirrors. Only one of you can exit through the final gate." The words fell heavily into the air. Only one can exit. That sentence changed everything. Even Leor looked uneasy now. Rowan remained still, but something inside him tightened quietly. The official raised his hand. "You will be paired at random." Metal tokens were drawn. Names called. Pairs formed. Rowan's name echoed in the hall. Rowan, paired with Leor. A silence followed. Leor turned toward him slowly. Neither spoke for a moment. The idea was simple, but cruel. Only one of them would reach the end. The doors to the labyrinth opened. Inside, the air was colder. The labyrinth of mirrors was not like a normal maze. Its walls were made of tall, polished glass panels that reflected not only images, but choices. Each reflection showed slightly different paths, different outcomes, different versions of the same moment. As they stepped inside, the gate closed behind them. A soft voice echoed. "Trust will guide you. Or destroy you." The first corridor split into two paths. In the glass ahead, Rowan saw a reflection of himself walking alone, reaching the final gate quickly, without Leor. In another reflection, he saw Leor doing the same, leaving him behind. The maze whispered without sound. "Choose." Leor looked at Rowan. "I don't like this," he said quietly. Rowan nodded. "Neither do I." They walked together into the maze. At first, they tried to stay close. But the paths shifted constantly. Walls moved silently. Reflections changed every time they stepped forward. Soon, they were forced to split slightly just to navigate. And that is when the trial began to work on their minds. At one junction, Rowan saw Leor standing near a dead-end path in a reflection. In that reflection, Leor looked injured, unable to continue. Another path showed Rowan walking ahead alone, free of delay. A voice, not real, but present in thought, seemed to ask, "If you continue with him, you may never reach the end." Rowan stopped. He looked at Leor, who was just a few steps away in reality. "Did you see that?" Leor asked. Rowan hesitated. "Yes." Leor swallowed. "I saw something too. I think I was alone in it." They both understood. The maze was not showing truth. It was showing fear disguised as possibility. They continued forward together, but the pressure increased. At another intersection, Leor suddenly stopped. "I can't do this," he said quietly. Rowan turned. "What do you mean?" Leor's voice shook slightly. "I keep seeing myself leaving you behind. I don't want to. But it feels like I will." Rowan stepped closer. "Then don't decide based on what you see in reflections," he said gently. "Decide based on what you choose to be." Leor looked down. The mirrors around them shifted again. Now they showed betrayal, loss, separation. Every version of the future looked uncertain. Leor's hands trembled. "What if I fail?" he whispered. Rowan paused. Then answered honestly. "Then we fail as people who tried to stay human in a place that wanted us to become something else." For a moment, silence filled the corridor. The mirrors flickered. Then, unexpectedly, some of them cracked slightly. Not physically breaking, but emotionally losing power, as if the maze could not fully hold their resolve. Together, they moved forward again. The final section of the labyrinth was narrow and dark. Only one gate remained ahead. But in front of it stood a single mirror, larger than all the others. And in that mirror, only one person could be seen clearly at a time. Rowan stepped forward first. He saw himself alone at the gate. Victorious, but empty. Leor stepped forward next. He saw the same. Then something changed. Both reflections merged. Suddenly, the mirror showed them standing together at the exit. Not one, but both. The maze trembled. The illusion collapsed. The final gate opened. They stepped out together into the sunlight. A rare moment of silence followed in the castle grounds. The rules had not expected this outcome. But something within the trial had changed. Trust had not broken them. It had rewritten the ending. Far above, Princess Elena watched from her balcony. For the first time, She leaned forward slightly as she saw the names of the survivors announced. Rowan's name remained. So did Leor's. And something unfamiliar stirred in her chest again. Not curiosity. Not fear. But recognition. Of something approaching that refused to be stopped by trials, mirrors, or silence. Only 2 trials remained. And the next one would not test the mind. It would test the heart directly.
you.